did you truly feel, with your third eye, that TNA was going to change the landscape of the industry? Did you truly believe that?
No, I never thought they were going to change the landscape of the industry. I thought they were going to make money and provide an alternative for another place for guys to work. And nobody, and even at that point, this was 2006, it's now 2013, to me, in the wrestling business, nobody is ever going to have that much television, that wide reach of television, that kind of production, that kind of talent roster, that kind of chance to challenge Vince McMahon again. It's not going to happen again. Not in our lifetime, and you're younger than me. So I thought, okay, this company, they are on Spike TV. They have a tremendous production crew. They have a great talent roster. They have, obviously, money, not Vince's money, but money behind them. This is the best chance we got. So I'm going to throw myself into this, as I always do. The OCD in me, I'm going to throw myself into this, and I'm going to do my dead level best to make this as good as it can be, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting at home one day, and Dutch calls me, right? And it was September, and Dutch calls me, and I answered the phone. He said, Jimmy, we made some changes in, I can't do Dutch, but you can imagine. Jimmy, we made some changes in the creative team. I said, okay. He said, we fired everybody but me and Jeff. I said, well, there's a start for you. That's good, because I'm not knocking anybody else that was involved with it, but when you got a room full of people, you got a room full, it's a Tower of Babel. It's just everybody nattering, right? You need a guy and the guy helping the guy, and that's what you need to book wrestling. He said, we hired one guy. I said, who's that? He said, Vince Russo. And see this face, please. Cameraman, pull back, because I actually did this accidentally. I can't do it again. You know, but that was the face. What I said, what? One of the reasons why I had agreed to come to work for the company was I thought that I was safe because he'd already been there and been fired. And so I thought, okay, we've got past that, and and I was dumbfounded, actually speechless, Jim Cornette, for a minute. And he said, well, and I can't remember what he said because I was in shock. I was like, PTSD. And I said, tell Jeff to call me, right? So Jeff don't call you very often. I worked for him for 3 years. I think he called me on the phone like 5 times. We'd see each other, but, he doesn't call. But I said, he called me either that day or the next day, and I'm watching the little pond in my neighbor's backyard, his big black dog's jumping around in the pond. And he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm watching this dog jump around in this pond and trying to figure out what the fuck you're doing. And he said, well, and it's that and the other thing. And he tried to sell me, we'll keep an eye on him. He's got different ideas. I said, yeah, he has different ideas, all right. I said, this ain't going to be good for business, me and him in the same place. Well, no, it'll worry, blah, blah, blah. And Jeff he's almost got Jerry's silver tongue. Jerry could say the glass is on your own face, as Teeny used to say. So I said, we'll talk about it when I get down there, because the next taping was a week or two later. So I got down there, and I'd already decided. I sat down with Jeff, sat down with Dutch. I said, look, this ain't going to work, obviously. I hate him. I'm sure if he doesn't hate me, I found out later he's scared of me, because Jeff yelled at him for being scared of me. He said, Dutch was listening outside one time when Jeff and Vince were having a fucking back and forth in the room, and Jeff finally blew up and said, why don't you goddamn just have the fucking fight then and see what happens, right? But anyway, I sat down with him. I said, look, it ain't going to be good for business. It's going to detract from business. I just started. I said, if you're set on having him here, let me give my notice. I'll bow out gracefully. I think Abyss at the time was a heel. I said, put some on TV. Abyss, to get some heat, can give me the black hole slam or whatever, and I'll be carried off on a stretcher and a spatula or whatever, because it's coming up on, I guess that was about October time by that point. We were coming up on Bound for Glory, and I figured, in the back of my mind, I thought sanity will prevail, and they will fire him again. And
you do realize it's the wrestling business, right?
Sanity never prevails. But still, see, I was smoking the hopium.
Oh boy.
I thought sanity will prevail, and they'll fire him after Christmas or whatever. And I think I even said, he'll probably be done by after Christmas, and then if you want me to, I'll come back. But I don't want to be in the same place at the same time. It's going to be bad for business. It'll detract. I'd work my notice by taking the deal just whenever the fuck.
Were there any counter incentives offered? Hey, why don't you stay? And if you do, we'll give you this, this, and this. Was that ever?
No, well, because at the time I wasn't even full-time. I was just coming down when they wanted me to do the deal, when they had me written on television, and because I told them I didn't want to drive down to Orlando twice a month. Might have been, was it once a month? No, twice a month. Yeah, and they do 2 TV, but it was just a 1 day of TV. Anyway, I digress. Point is, maybe Russo's up there now. Anyway, Jeff wouldn't take the notice. He said, no. He said, Corny, I'm not going to take your notice. If you don't come back, it means that you're no-showing. And he knows, now he's getting me my old-fashionedness, right? Don't work opposition. Don't no-show. I said, oh, come on. He said, and he silver-tongued it. He said, you won't have to talk to him. You won't have to, Dutch is your agent as a talent. You won't have to speak to him. You won't have any interaction with him. Okay. Didn't want to be the, I'm not a quitter. Didn't want to be the quitter. God damn, all right. So we coexisted for a couple months, although at Bound for Glory, which I think was in St. Louis that year, I was sick with that was when Kurt Angle debuted, right? I'm horribly sick with the flu. I ended up losing my voice. I actually went to the bar the night beforehand and had a couple drinks, tried to loosen my voice up, and of course that just made me think matter, so I ended up, Jesus Christ, this is a closed set. The cameraman, ladies and gentlemen, the cameraman has just walked off. Now. The producer just walked off. We're literally in an empty room now.
This is where it gets good.
I ended up, one of the boys stirred me up, and I ended up the next day when I got in the elevator, I saw a bloody spot where I'd pinned my knuckles, where I'd punched the wall thinking of fucking Russo, right? So anyway, I can't speak. I introduce Kurt Angle. I say one line, because I'm sick, but I wouldn't miss this for anything, blah, blah, blah. And then anyway, it was in December. Jeff said, come down early. I want to talk to you. So in December, Jeff made me the offer, look, how about in addition to being the management figure, whatever they called me, you be an agent. Because we need wrestling minds. Dutch needs help. We need somebody to lay the matches out. You already know Keith, David. You can work with the TV truck. You got plenty of experience, blah, blah, blah. We're sitting having sushi. And I said, okay. I said, I'll do it. And, of course, there was more money involved, but also I would have to come, to every taping. I said, I'll do it because at that point I thought, okay, I said I wanted to give everything I had to TNA Wrestling. And now it's like they're being infiltrated from within by the evil communist forces. Maybe there's something I can do to, as bad as Russo fucks it up, at least if I work hard, maybe I can balance it out where they've at least got an even playing field, and things will be not better, but at least not worse. Maybe I can, once again, wrestling will make you crazy. This is what I was thinking. Some way or another, I can counteract the negative influence that he will have on the product by being so good on the other side as a positive influence that will balance each other out.
And?
Well,
did that happen?
No.
Was there one thing in particular that you can recall that maybe someone offered up as an idea, and in your mind you went, that makes no sense at all, and there became this clash of ideas?
Yeah, every time that every production meeting. It was every production meeting because, and maybe I guess I shot myself in the foot because when Dutch was originally talking to me about coming in before the Russo thing, I said, Dutch, I don't want to book any more wrestling. I've been booking OVW by myself 6 years in a fucking row through hernia surgery. I missed 6 weeks of TV in 6 years. 2 weeks from hernia surgery, 2 or 3 weeks when my mom passed away, and 1 week when I thought we had a pipe burst in my house, we had a fucking flood. All right, okay, so 6 weeks and 3 years. And with the hernia surgery, I hobbled in with 14 surgical staples in my crotch and only missed one TV, but missed several on the air, but I was back in the back for the other one. Anyway, so I take the job as agent, and that was great. I liked working with the guys, especially the young guys. Bobby Roode I was a huge fan of. I mean, just tremendously. And him and Storm were great as a team. And, I don't want to mention everybody. Then if I'll leave somebody out, they'll think, well, he didn't like me. But no, I like almost all the guys I thought, had something going on for them. But the thing is, then I'd come to the production meetings, right? And the way it was set up, everybody in the office, all the agents, Jeff, the announcers, by Don West and Mike Tenay. Mike Tenay I'd known since the 80s when he lived in Vegas. Jesus Christ, there's a bus station in here. People just come and go at all hours.
I hang out at bus stations.
Yeah. I've heard that about you. Yeah. So anyway, Don West, remind me to tell you the story first time I met Don West, but
okay.
we'll get off on a tangent here. But anyway, we'd all sit in the production meeting room, and Mike Tenay would read the format. The format that basically Dutch and Jeff and Russo had agreed on, but that Russo primarily is the one who would sit there and type it out and everything. So Mike, and it made it even worse because Mike would read it in a non-judgmental voice. He wouldn't roll his eyes. He wouldn't really get into it, but he wouldn't really scoff at it. He would just read it like a monotone reading of it, whatever was there. It could be, good, bad, or indifferent. He would read it the same way. So I'd be sitting across from Keith Mitchell, and when it got to this, just the real stupid shit that Russo insisted on putting in, and I'll give you a few examples here in a minute, but every week, I wish I'd have brought my TNA formats, and I could read them to you, but I'd look over at Keith Mitchell, and from a production standpoint, he'd be going, how the fuck are we going to shoot this? Because remember, Russo's the guy one time in WCW called him on Friday and said, we need a Partridge Family bus on Monday in Boston. You can just, okay, we'll go to the Partridge Family bus store.
Sure.
So Keith Mitchell would be rolling his eyes, right? Like, oh, geez, how are we going to shoot this? And David Sahadi has never said a bad word about anybody, so he'd kind of be there, but Don West would be, fiddling around. And I'd look at Mike, and every once in a while I could almost get Mike Tenay to bust, because I'd give him that sideways look like, this is fucking horseshit, right? But he wouldn't. He was a pro. And I would sit there and just what he was doing to the fucking show, to the credibility of the show. One time in particular, the first time I was going to quit, just get in the car and go home. So that's why I never go anywhere without a car and keys in my pocket. Where I can leave anytime I'm somewhere. Yes, I can leave and go home whenever I want.
Great advice for anyone.
I was going to, as Jim Cornette, as the on-air commissioner, was going to make a tag team match. Rick and Scott, the Steiner brothers, versus Kurt Angle and his fucking wife Karen. And I was going to go, and there was some reason for this written down that I was going to make this fucking match. And so I didn't say anything about it during the production meeting. But I waited till afterwards. I told Keith Mitchell, I said, well, I'm going to go get in the truck. And, thanks. It's been nice working. No, don't do that. I said, all right. So what I did was I went to Wendy's, had 2 triple cheeseburgers, and thought about it and came back and went to Jeff and said, okay, now what can we do that I'll do? Because elsewise I'm going home. I'm not going to make a match between the Steiner brothers and Kurt Angle and his wife. How could I fucking feasibly? Sure. So we ended up being a handicap match. I don't know what the fuck. It was constantly trying to fix somebody else's shit. Like, you start the murder mystery. You write the first chapter and then you hand it to me. Okay, you write the rest of it. Who did it? I don't know. Fixing shit is worse than taking a blank piece of paper and starting from scratch, right? And in the production meetings, I would ask pertinent questions that I needed to know as an agent, or that I knew that Keith Mitchell as the producer needed to know, or the director needed to know, or that the other agents, if it was somebody needed to know, such as, when did the bell ring to start the match?
Good question.
Because one time he had a match actually with a finish, but it never started. And I said, the first thing that the guys are going to ask me is, the match never started, so how can it be over? Oh, nobody will notice, right? First thing the guys asked me, well, how can the match have a finish? We never started the match. So I'd ask these questions, because it's a fucking television program. We need to know these things. He wasn't prepared. He's like the Republicans. He wasn't prepared to answer those questions that were asked that anybody in their right mind would fucking ask, because he thought it.
Do you think he wrote them with an intent to put you in an awkward position?
No, he wrote them because he's a fucking idiot and he don't know how to write any better wrestling than what he wrote.
Glad I asked that question.
Well, no, it wasn't like it was on purpose. He was really that fucking fucked in the head as far as wrestling. The one, and I didn't even know we were going to go off on this line of commentary, and I promise, folks, this will not all be about Vince Russo, but he's asking me the questions, and I'm trying to answer them to the best of my ability. My favorite one was when Abyss was being psychoanalyzed by Dr. Stevie Richards. Okay, now folks, we are being led to believe, and this would just, that's what, after a while, I must admit, you know, that was the end of 2006. By fall of 2009, I had mentally tuned out. I'd mentally tuned out a long time before that, but because it wasn't going to get any better, it was only going to get worse. Then they started bringing in everybody that they could sign that had ever worked for Vince for all the money, and meanwhile, the guys that were doing all the work were getting paid nothing, while the top
I'd like
guys
to get your
were
thoughts
you know,
on that when you
well,
roll
I
into
got a
that.
few.
I'm sure.
But so suddenly somehow Stevie Richards, that everybody's seen on television as a wrestler for fucking years and years, is a doctor. And not only that, but in the Impact Zone, he has an office with a secretary, with a receptionist, and he's a fucking psychiatrist. And Abyss, who's another fucking, I love the person behind Abyss, and I love the gimmick of Abyss. I haven't seen Joseph Park because I don't watch it. I read on the internet every few days who's hired, who's fired, and who's made an ass out of themselves, but I don't watch wrestling anymore.
At some point, all of those were me.
Yeah, well, I know.
Especially the last one.
But so anyway, so Abyss goes into Dr. Stevie's receptionist's office, and he's waiting to see the fucking doctor. And the receptionist gives him a cup of coffee, and Mike Tenay is having to read this, right? Because he would write out the pre-tapes, like everything that he thought the guys were going to say. Of course, the guys that could talk would change it, because they didn't want to say the stupid shit. And the guys that couldn't talk or didn't have the pull to change it would try to memorize it. That's why they'd have that deer caught in the headlights look, because they're trying to recite the words that they have memorized that have been written by a fucking idiot. So anyway, he gets a cup of coffee, he's sitting there, Dr. Stevens has come on in, he gets on the couch, and Mike Tenay is reading this. And here was the embarrassing thing. The embarrassing thing always to me was Scott Fishman, who was not a director, but one of the executive producers, one of Spike TV personnel. Okay. You would see his name at the end of the UFC programs when UFC was on Spike. He was the guy that would come from Spike to oversee the TNA programming and the UFC programming to make sure that none of these people did anything to get them, get their license pulled or kicked off the air or whatever. And he would be sitting in the production meetings. And I just knew he was going back to the UFC, to the real sport, to what they really cared about. And he was saying in the production meetings, this fucking idiot that writes this fucking wrestling show can't even spell because words were misspelled, and shit was wrong because they didn't change it in the computer, and just the stupid things that he has these guys say and do. It was embarrassing. I'd look over at him every once in a while when something was really outrageously stupid, and he's just waiting to go play golf, and he'll come back for the taping, right? So anyway, Dr. Stevie's talking to Abyss, and suddenly he says, "Oh, Abyss, I see that the blank has taken effect already. You see, it's what I put in the coffee that my receptionist gave you, because it paralyzes your nervous system. You're still breathing. You're still conscious. You can hear every word I say. You know what's going on around you, but you can't move a muscle, Abyss." Where do I fucking start? Not only was that the goddamn stupidest thing I've ever heard of, but it actually on the format said, "The blank has taken effect." Like there was really some kind of this goddamn pygmy curare poison from the wilds of the Amazon that you could get that would have this effect, but he couldn't be bothered to get on the internet and search out what the name of it was, so he just left it blank like somebody else was going to know. "Oh, you mean the draconian poisoning? Oh yeah, that's what it was." He left it fucking blank to come up with a name for this fictitious fucking poison. I've saved that format especially it's sitting on the shelf in my office as when I finally said wrestling is fucking pretty much done with this kind of shit like this going on.